Ladies and gentlemen of the crypto space, we're live on a Monday, July 22nd at 11:32 a.m. as the world turns and the days go by. And for some people, it's the hours, and some people, it's the minutes. You can drive yourself nuts looking at the short term, and I may be the foremost authority on the insanity of looking at 6-month candles. So you can look at the daily and shorter time frames to get a sense of such a unhealthy short-term perspective on the direction of markets, direction of price action, and really the structure of the world. But when you look at these very high time frame candles, in many regards, it's not even a price chart. It's an interesting statement, isn't that? It's not even price action, it's structure of the system, the pressures that move the world, the forces, the hidden hand that, just is there behind every action, be it individual or geopolitical. Such a high level, very uh, philosophical concept. It's hard to express what I'm trying to say, but it's like it tells the story behind the story. The structure of the system is when you see, like, look at this chart. This chart tells you an entire era of global geopolitics and, like domestic policy for the U.S. And then clearly that's also indirectly talking about the respective domestic policy of every damn country on this planet. And obviously, the U.S. drives that because of the demand for the dollar globally. Such a strange world that the whole planet just said, "Oh, we're going to use this currency," and they did. That's the reality of the situation. There's no mandate to use the dollar. There's no obligation. There's the unspoken very spoken conspiracy theories about use of force or the military, but that is not the majority of reality. The majority is it's opt-in by choice. It's a company in Bangladesh that goes to the local bank and says, I need to borrow X amount of dollars because I got a manufacturer or product provider or retailer that wants payment in dollars. So I need dollars. It's just the denomination that has been chosen. So it's really the retailers that choose the denomination. If you think about it, that someone is demanding payment in a particular denomination, therefore someone has to get financing in that denomination. And that momentum isn't changing, and this chart doesn't say it's changing, but this is the DXY on a 6-month candle. Each candle is 6 months of your entire life, which means there's less than 200 candles for your entire life. How about that shit? So J.D. Vance talks about stuff that very well-known macroeconomists talk about. It really account for why manufacturing has been completely exported from the United States. It's a currency-related phenomenon. A strong currency says pay in other denominations, and that's outside of this country, and then we just import the output of that productivity. And that's exactly what we did. When you're buying a Japanese car, you're paying in using dollars to finance labor in yen, and that yen is cheaper, so we're able to buy that product at a relatively cheaper price. And that's the story of globalization. And JD has talked about or grilled um, Powell about the strong dollar, which Powell gave pretty uninspiring and a pretty uninspiring response to. So I wouldn't dare say he didn't understand the point JD was trying to make during this particular Senate inquiry. Um, but he sure as hell didn't give a satisfying response. And it's about what a strong dollar does to U.S. manufacturing, which is labor, which is jobs available to people in the United States. And a weaker dollar would bring manufacturing back. But we've only had very short periods of a weak dollar. So let's say 80 or lower. So there's only a period in the 90s where this was the case. A couple of years, about 4 years, 5 years. And then obviously just after 2008, there was a period of weakness below the 80s. But notice how you have the series of lower highs. The world doesn't work well with a strong dollar. The world falls apart, which is the story of the U.S. having to supply the dollar. And this is our biggest export at this point. It's our debt instruments. It's the wrong take that people have with regard to U.S. debt. We have the debt in good part because the U.S. debt is demanded of us. Because the U.S. debt creates a literal instrument. So you guys are engaging with the crypto markets and you're buying and selling particular assets. And it just so happens that this particular asset that the U.S. Treasury produces is an asset, is something that people are demanding to purchase. And there's a supply and demand balance to these assets, just like any currency or asset you deal with in the crypto markets. So it's a demanded asset. Go figure. So we're not just printing them treasuries to raise capital or finance our fiscal deficit. There's also a demand side to that equation, which is something that's easily looked over in social media commentary. Anyhow, a significantly weaker dollar changes the entire equation. And you could do an inverse correlation between this chart and crypto periods of exuberance. And broadly speaking, the biggest periods of exuberance are these two red candles from a 6-month time frame, or maybe two. Two red candles. Two red candles here back in 17. Was that H1, H2? Basically all of 17 was an absolute, it was insane, and there you go. 1, 2. Here, let me break out the marker. The marker of truth, ladies and gentlemen. Can you really draw on a 6-month candle chart? Okay, the marker of truth. So you all are waiting for what people call from a Bitcoin cycle perspective, the next cycle. But that's it. That's the meat of the history of these crypto markets, what you would call bull cycles, is 4 candles on this little chart. And they're bearish candles. It's when the dollar weakens and when foreign currency strengthens. And when foreign currency strengthens, that increases liquidity in the system because there is much more foreign currency than US dollars. Other components, interest rates and the move indicator, are critical to this analysis, but broadly speaking, when the dollar goes down, asset prices get weird, especially crypto asset prices. And look where we've come from second half of 22, end of 22. Q4 22, if you looked at it on a quarterly chart instead of a half a year chart, but that's where things bottomed because the dollar weakened. And we've been wrestling with pretty much horizontal price action for quite some time, and just coincidentally, the dollar was going horizontal. But if you want to reshore domestic manufacturing and you want to do these types of things, the dollar has to come down significantly. How they do that, that's another question. I don't know, mechanically. But the dollar and currency is a relative game. If we double our currency supply and every other nation doubles their currency supply, this chart doesn't change at all. It's a relative game. So we need to significantly increase our currency supply in of dollars um, relative to the rest of the world if we want to reshore domestic manufacturing, if we want to make it economically reasonable to produce goods and, frankly, mostly goods, but also services in the United States. I say services because why do you think customer service has been exported everywhere? It's the same thing. To reshore goods and services, the dollar has to come down structurally in a meaningful way. Whether that's a policy goal or an agenda of the administration, that's another story. But if anyone actually understands that, clearly J.D. Vance did say that very, very explicitly to Jerome Powell during an exchange. So I found that quite interesting because few understand that, but he does, and I heard him say it. So it's important to understand that yes, that would impact our bags. Hashtag my bags. So what does it mean? What is the world like in that situation? What is the mechanics of the system? What's going on? So it's just very important to understand the context of what you're looking for, what benefits you, and frankly, it benefits everyone. But there's implications to reshoring manufacturing. The cheaper dollar, there goes inflation in the crypto markets and asset markets. So inflation isn't what people think it is either. Guess what? Bitcoin goes to $150,000. Holy shit, the inflation rate is out of control in Bitcoin land. Inflation is pricing out people that have less money. They can no longer buy the same quantity of Bitcoin. It's inflating. So consumer price inflation is akin to Bitcoin going up in price. It's not a consumer, I guess you could say a consumer price. You're trying to consume Bitcoin or acquire Bitcoin, so the Bitcoin price is inflating, going up. So that's just, think about that in context the next time someone says inflation is out of control. Okay, what kind of inflation? Are you talking about currency inflation? You're talking about, what are you talking about? So inflation is a relative phenomena also, just like currency. Anywho, the 6-month chart has screamed to me for quite some time, and it's literally been like 2 candles, maybe 3 or 4 since I've told this entire story. Yeah, because it's only been 4 or 5 candles since our last period of exuberance, end of 2021, that this chart needs to structurally come down. And then they go ahead and print, then this chart goes ahead and prints a massive shooting star candle, massive, monumental, holy shit, that's a shooting star candle. So at least from a technical perspective, that's an expression of capitulation, blow off top, reversal. It's a shooting star candle. Now bear in mind that's expressive of policy, geopolitical policy. You don't just have a candle like that. You don't just reverse. This chart doesn't spontaneously reverse. Under normal circumstances, this chart goes up, 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 up. It doesn't stop going up unless there's like a monumental shift in GDP outside the U.S. and we just double our imports. How does the dollar get out of the U.S.? By us buying shit. That's under normal circumstances. So the only way this comes down if some other country is getting extremely wealthy and by selling us shit, if that makes sense. So this is a massive signal, the shooting star candle, because that's a hell of a reversal. I like to, as much as there's so many other charts, this is such a meaningful chart because look at the time weighted average price. It's green red line right here. And these are our crypto bull markets that everyone is like, oh, it's such a big thing for people. Meanwhile, it's literally 4 candles on this stupid chart. Tiny little speck of nothing, of time, microscopic time. barely pushed through the time-weighted average price to the downside. You notice these three white lines I have: higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low. The dollar has been in, from a 6 month perspective, which is a macro time perspective, has been in a structural bull market since 2008. Up, 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 up. Structural bull market. So what would indicate reversal? You need more than just currency. You need to look at the bond market, and it just so happens, it's quite interesting. You go to the 6 month chart on the 10-year bond, which is the United States 10-year bond. This is meaningful shit. It's the core of the U.S. debt market. That looks like a directionality reversal. In fact, this looks like the most incredible blow-off bottom anyone has ever seen in a technical chart, producing basically uh, the mark of death, an inverted shooting star, death candle. Wow, that is a blow-off bottom. So what this indicates, along with the DXY, interestingly, is a structural trend reversal. Higher highs, higher lows. And frankly, the damn Fed has confirmed that by saying we're entering a period of higher interest rates. Yes, of course. Higher lows, higher highs on interest rates, which, if you apply to the DXY perspective, which means lower highs and lower lows. Ho ho! And how they do it's another story. But the takeaway here, we can state from the highest of time frames, 6 month candles, you have been engaging in these crypto markets in a structural bull market for the dollar. The entire lifespan, including the inception of Bitcoin. It's been a structural bull market. We have never seen, never, ever seen a structural bear market for the dollar. You get below 89. 89 here would be so weird to see. And then in 26, 27, you get a pop to like 100. And then a rejection at 100. You're not gonna see it until 28 and 32. And that you can always say you're early. But I think the real interesting shit is 28 and 32. 2028 and 2032. You need the breakdown here. You need to see where it gets to from a policy standpoint. You see a blow off bottom to like 80 and then shit breaks out. And then the world gets into a titty tantrum, everything falls apart, and the dollar blows off to 98. And it's rejected at 100. And then maybe here, 90 and then the 32, and then a rejection at 95, and then you get the lower low at 79. And we're heading into like the 2030s here. This type of time frame conversation. That'd be so weird. You don't understand what you would start to experience in these crypto markets, because this is not only just would be a 14, 15-year trend reversal. I'm sorry, a 16-year trend reversal. It would also be a 2014-year trend reversal. It would also be an indication of like an emerging market rotation. Capital outflow out of the United States, investing outside of the United States, which we haven't seen in quite some time. And these are massive, massive structural shifts of capital flows. And when you say that word, so here's the kicker. You have to understand things in how they impact you. When you say a structural shift in capital flows, you're talking about a different experience in life, a different flow, different types of employment, different relationships between the employer treats people differently. It's a whole different world of economic behavior, which affects everyone psychologically. So everyone literally behaves differently. So, broadly speaking, they have to do this. And I say that with not a hope, but it's like if they don't do that, if they don't, we don't have a structural decline in the dollar's price, um, countries fail. And we've already seen how many countries fail outside of the U.S. I mean, literally currency failure, which is anarchy and chaos and civil unrest with death and violence. And if they want to kick the can and keep this insane fiscal deficit going and this insane dollar experiment going in its current form, post $71, structurally the dollar can depreciate. And that is a way to significantly kick the can. If the dollar is cheaper, now all of a sudden the rest of the world can buy a lot of it. Therefore, they can engage in a lot of financial activity, and they could easily get a fair amount more time to contemplate the structure of the system. Cheaper products are in demand. If the dollar is cheaper, that product is in increasing demand. And it just so happens that product is the chosen denomination for global finance in majority, strong majority. Anyway, hope that helps. We're almost there. Almost there. The reason this will come down, which is the move indicator, bond market volatility, U.S. debt volatility, is because this is everything that this is the entire purpose of the United States Treasury, the entire mandate of Janet Yellen. Everything else she says is in pursuit of lowering volatility in this market. The whole curve, whole volatility of the entire U.S. debt market. It just should be a place to go if you need collateral or you need to cash. You need to sell your collateral for cash. And it needs to barely move. It needs to be the most deep and liquid market in the world. It's their entire mandate. So they are mandated at their corest of core level to drive this chart down. We're heading into it's not even the trifecta. It's like the quadfecta of bullish confluence. It's just they got to drive the damn dollar down if they want to kick the can. They got to get the damn collateral market, the U.S. debt market, under control. And this, boom, this will help because if this rolls over and they finally get control over collateral volatility, there goes the Eurodollar printer, and there goes debt outside the world. It just blows off into infinity and beyond. And why are you going to buy dollars if you could print them cheaper? That's a simple equation. That's like the Eurodollar market arbitrage. Which is cheaper? Is it cheaper to buy a discounted U.S. debt instrument and borrow against it? Because maybe you could get favorable terms. Maybe you could borrow at, closer to face value, depending on the lender, because that's an interesting underwriting consideration. If you could buy a U.S. 10-year, Treasury for 90 cents on the dollar and borrow against 98 cents on the dollar, then and obviously the lender is taking origination fee and they're going to capture face value. They're going to capture 100 cents on the dollar. And you get to borrow at 98 and you bought it at 90. That's cheaper than buying the damn dollar. So the whole world has this arbitrage between that and buying a dollar at FX market rates. And that's always going on. But this rolls over. And now, so that's the kicker. And that's why this chart is the most exciting forward-looking indicator of where the hell we are. This rolls over, and there goes the bonuses to the bankers around the world. This rolls over, and the banks are like, all right, fine. Now we could start accepting maybe more different years or different quantities of collateral for dollars. It makes it a more favorable condition for debt expansion. Less risk. It's the whole Aave analogy I tell you guys. If the collateral's not moving, if Ethereum's $3,000 for 6 months, You're going to probably bump your borrow rate health factor to like a 2 instead of a 5. If Ethereum's going from 3 to 4,000, you're probably going to be significantly over collateralized because you don't know what the hell is going to happen. But if it's very consistent, you're going to lever up and you're going to get your bubble. You're going to get your currency bubble. So when this rolls over, it's the forward-looking indicator of the currency expansion cycle, the currency bubble. And that's when shit gets weird. And that's when crypto does what it does. You look at crypto inverted to this chart, and there's the relationship, very similar to the dollar. This is a little bit more forward-looking. Dollar's more policy. This is more Eurodollar market and the Aave analogy. Hope that helps. You could do the same thing with the yen as well, because the yen is in good part tightly related to the market pricing of U.S. government debt. So this is the driver of volatility in the moves. This blows up, move blows up, and there goes currency contraction, currency deflation. People are repaying debt, people are borrowing less, so you get the rolling top of like an M2 expansion, and things start to slow down, if not contract, in which we just saw post 22. We saw contraction in global currency supply. And that's some scary shit. This might have been the most serious contraction that the crypto markets have experienced from a macroeconomic standpoint. Crypto's still here. Survived. What survived? You guys know what I talk about. What survives? That's what matters. All you have to do is survive to the next cycle. And to top it all off, the next cycle looks like it's going to be just quadfecta of insanity. Crypto Tubes in the house. Good morning, El Capitan. How was your weekend? Good weekend. Spent some time with the family, birthday party, my cute little creatures of my children. Happy days. Diego, hi. Do you have a specific red pill moment in your life? Man, that's a good question. Well, yeah, partially. I've had many red pills from a financial standpoint, from a legal standpoint. From a financial standpoint, it was really understanding what the dollar was. And then folks back in the day talked about, they still talk about like dollars in a bank aren't yours. And it's like, it's the same thing with the crypto markets. If you deposit to a centralized exchange, it's not yours. It's maybe it's double entry accounting was the realization, liabilities and assets. And, but the big one was like liabilities. Like, that was just big red pill. Like, you could pay for shit with your bank deposits, but your bank deposits are in dollars. It's the bank owes you a dollar. So there's the assets and the liability side of the balance sheet. The liabilities is your bank deposit. They owe it to you. It's not a dollar, but you could pay your credit card with that liability, with that bank deposit. That's crazy. And that's what a dollar is. And then you just really like take it to the extreme, and then you understand that that's 99.9% of 99% of dollars, or maybe it's 90. You can look at M0. M0 is like base money, and the rest is just liabilities based on actual dollars. It's very few actual dollars relative to the amount of dollars in circulation. $5.72 trillion. This was another big red pill observation. So if there's $5.72 trillion on the planet Earth, and Mike Howell talks about 270 trillion plus in balance sheet capacity, which is obviously changing every second, so that's just a very broad statement. But the point is, if there's a couple $100 trillion in circulation in one way, shape, or form, but there's only actually $5.7 trillion, that 270 is basically leverage on top of 5.7 trillion. But the 270 plus trillion has been printed a long time ago. A long time ago, maybe even decades ago. So this chart isn't what you think it is. This chart isn't a dollar. You don't use these. Some people do, like cash and paper money, but even that's a liability of the Fed. So you're using predominantly, the vast majority of society uses their bank deposits, ACH, and they pay for things as such. So they're using part of the $270 trillion in supply. So those dollars were already printed. So this is like this chart, M0, actual dollars on the planet, is kind of like you have an Aave account with one Ethereum and you have uh frankly 270. You have like um $600,000. No, I'm sorry, 10. You have 65, $70,000 borrowed against one Ethereum. I know that's. But this chart, when this goes up, this is like you depositing an extra Ethereum. You're increasing the collateral, the backing of your debt, which is the total dollars in circulation. So this chart going up is a deleveraging of the system. This chart isn't what you think it is. Oh, the inflation. They're not. These aren't going into supply. This is frankly, these dollars have already been printed a long, long time ago. So when this goes up, they're deleveraging the system. That was a big red pill moment for me. Looseness, tightness. Another interesting time was understanding interest rates better because everyone in 20 and 21 are like, "Oh, Fred Printer, go Burr," and then I'm like, "It's got to be a bigger story here." And it turns out that is mechanically one of the stupidest metaphors there may be. It's just not real. It's very short-sighted because we're going to experience some very insane crypto market activity at very high interest rates. You don't need 0% APR. What is 0% APR is not going to, one, I don't think it's going to happen again, but that's not the cause of all this. And QE as well is very short-sighted narratives. It's only part of the equation, and that's why the bigger part of the equation is the move chart. Much bigger. That's mechanically how the system works. QE is just them managing. QE is the Fed stepping in to assist the Treasury and manage collateral volatility. QE is the Fed stepping in to help the Treasury manage this. Broad stroke. That's what QE is. Interest rates, domestic consumer price inflation, and yeah, higher interest rates are supposed to reduce borrowing, which they did. And it's going to blow up the commercial real estate sector in the United States, which it already is doing. And it's going to cause all sorts of insane distortions in residential real estate as well. But it has basically ground borrowing to a halt, and its policy has messed up domestic U.S. bank lending capacity. That's another story, crazy distortions there. But take that broad stroke. If U.S. interest rates are supposed to slow down borrowing, how well has that impacted U.S. government borrowing? Nothing stops this train, as Lyndon Alden says most recently. It didn't slow down credit at all. So if it didn't slow down credit for the U.S. government at all, and it ground, private sector borrowing to a halt, more or less, and U.S. government borrowing compensated for the slowdown in private sector borrowing, there was no net reduction in borrowing. So the interest rates have been neutered. They don't mean what they used to mean. And that's really the world we're entering, where things that used to mean something don't mean the same thing anymore. They mean something very different. So we don't need a significant reduction in interest rates to experience ferocious market activity. And frankly, the best statement I can make is the next bull cycle in crypto occurring at an elevated interest rate, let's say 4.25%, 4.5%, 4.75, maybe they don't reduce it too much at all, will be so god darn weird because interest rates are the foundation for incentives, and incentives govern human behavior. The banker analogy or the banker story. You're a banker and you got 100 mil that the bank says go sell this money. Think about it in those terms. And you got to sell at 0.25% interest or 15 basis points, whatever. You make it a shit bonus. But now, hey, bank says go sell 100 mil and we're going to give you a 3% bonus, 2% bonus. Holy shit. So when this market cycle takes off, the banks are going to be able to throw around massive incentives to sell dollars. Unlike anything we've seen in the entire history of the crypto markets. Higher for longer. A higher interest rate environment. Hope that helps. Sir Joe, present. Jedi's in the house. Hello, my friend. 6-month candles. A time frame that tells us more than just price action. A time frame that tells us more than just a particular chart. Tells us about the structure of the financial system as a whole. Big stuff. Meaningful stuff that affects our lives, not just our investments, but our day-to-day lives. The behavior of businesses, the behavior of service providers, changes everything. Different interest rate environment. I am DC, back from touching grass. Grass is always good. Over the weekend, the biggest red pill moment I had, Diego, and it comes from the IMDC saying back from touching grass. Weekends, day of rest. These are such. What's the difference? We call it a Saturday and a Sunday. It's a name on a day. There's no difference between a Saturday, a Sunday, and a Monday. It's this constructed system, which gets very deep because technically that also applies to time as well. That's way too deep for this conversation. But a structured system. They created a system, and this is a long time ago. This goes back to the days when the churches were basically maybe even stronger than kings and queens and governments. Nowadays, that's not the case. But we operate in a world that's built for us, which literally is the entirety of our world. What you do when you wake up, what products you buy, what services are available to you are based on this world that is created for us. And the Matrix analogies will exist forever because they nailed it. Whether you see the code or not, it's there. You have the jobs that are available to you because those are the ones that are economically reasonable based on government incentives and somewhat demand from the population. But, it's so much of the system is acceptance of programming. And even on an unconscious level. Why do you go to school? What careers you choose? How do you save? Oh, I'm going to take that lovely, 4% match 401k from my employer, and that's my retirement plan. Do you accept the programming at even an unconscious level? That's all you need to be plugged into the system. It's all a crafted system. And even if you see it, it's still the system that we must engage. At least see it. I guess that's what's the biggest takeaway. Tapsy, what's up, y'all? Yeah, I was in the house. How are you? Good morning, Cap. Thought about investing in Stargate. I've had a Stargate position for quite some time. I mean, look at 537. Remarkable chart. The proper price point to buy it at was $1.25. It's okay. So you can't own everything, and I have plenty of exposure vis-a-vis Stargate and Tapioca. Can't own everything, and I sold my airdrop. Thank you is appreciated. Thank you, Stargate team and Layer Zero team. Love them. I know them to a degree. I've spoken with them individually, Brian. But that's okay. Fear of missing out. Like I could have sold at 530 instead of four and change. I think I sold at like 410, 415. All right, fine. So you're like, oh man, I missed out on that money. I could have sold at five and change. You must realize that that is an emotional poison. You must realize that that is something to cure. How? I don't know. It's all an individual challenge how we manage our emotions, but that is not something that's good. Sold at 415. It's 530. Great. I love the protocol. I have exposure to the protocol. That's it. That's the entire takeaway. Not that I could have made more money and I didn't. You made the amount of money you did. And that's what matters. You're playing against yourself. You're not playing about what could have been, what might have been. All that matters is what is, what did occur. And that's why most recently I talk about business rules. And that's really the how you judge how well you're doing. It's not could-haves and should-haves. It's what is. And are you following your rules? If you follow your rules and you are consistent over time, you will head in a good direction. You will do well. And that's what matters. Not you could have had $100 million by holding whiff from a half a penny to whatever the hell it's at. Actually, let's take a look and see how it's doing for the fun of it. 280. That's insane. Imagine that dude that bought it at a penny. You drive yourself nuts over that bullshit. Bullshit. You drive yourself nuts about comparing performance. Compare your performance about your past performance. And a great way to do that is how much capital did you have in 2019? How much money did you produce in 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30? And chart your revenue. How much revenue did you produce? And the age-old insanity of net worth. Think any of the billionaires give a shit about their net worth? No, they're like, all right. Bezos is like, all right, fine. These amount of options cleared. I have this amount of stock to sell. I want this amount of cash. Sell it. Can the market absorb it? Sure, he's still considerate of price point. That's what matters. It's Friday. What you can do on a Friday, how much that's it's not net worth. That's an insanity and a sickness. Net worth means much less than people think it means. Also, can you give an update about Ramsey's still positive outlook from a business perspective, not token necessarily? Yeah. Broadly, yeah. So we'll really only know what the hell happens in 2028, 2030. You need some time. You need 4 years, at least a cycle. So I've mentioned to folks very simply, if this ranges between 24 cents and, 18 cents for the next 4 years, but it's producing 50% APR, so you can only really digest it, a novel protocol, a bifurcated incentive system, in hindsight over a period of time. Because if the revenue is consistent for years and Arbitrum dollars increase, then that could be a very interesting thing as a balance sheet component. So if you go over to here, you look at Arbitrum, $620 million a day. One, that's a lot of money. Two, that's barely any money. Do you get my point? Do you get that point? So 620 mil is a lot of money from zero, but 620 mil in the grand scheme of things, Seems like it's microscopic. What's it going to be in 2028, 2032? 5 trill? Trillions. Volume. Market activity, not necessarily TVL, the mystical TVL, which I don't appreciate much. I'll talk to you in a minute. But volume. Volume should be much greater than TVL or total stablecoins available. And when that happens, there goes the interest rates because there goes the transaction fees, and then maybe you get to another level of price action. Maybe you see something like this. This is a very forward-looking statement. So it breaks out, and then it goes from here. And then in 2032, you see stuff like this. Boom. And then it goes here. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just saying that is a conceptual, an idea that kind of sounds reasonable. And these things break from levels. And that's probably something similar for the likes of curve products and Aura and stuff like that, and the other V33s, Velodrome, Base, so on and so forth. That does sound interesting. And that's it. That's as simple as it can be to potentially understand where these types of instruments are heading. This is not, I don't talk in terms of, the 10,000x on a meme coin type capital management. This is obviously much more strategic. This is revenue and how I've discussed the business model. So your revenue, you can invest in collateral, and collateral you could borrow, and from you borrow, you can invest, and your cash flow pays off the debt. Excess cash flow could buy more collateral, and debt is not just for investing. Debt is also for maybe you got to buy something. And the more collateral you have, and the more investments you have, roll the clock forward for 8, 12 years, you have much more collateral, much more investments. You're able to do much more activity. So this is type of instrument that is much more consistent with a well-structured business operation as compared to someone obsessing with net worth. The unhealthy expectation of so much of this crypto space, net worth, which means jack shit unless you have a rigorous uh, set of business operating procedures. It's just not a healthy mentality. Critical mass, that is a lot of gibberish. So buy something like that. I am DC. While I've been away, I've been contemplating the thought of no dramatic appreciation. I just manage my capital base to provide income. You see, the equation, you need to think about it from a scale perspective. It scales. So if you have $10,000 producing 20% APR, you could buy X amount of collateral, you could borrow X amount of debt, you could you could pay the debt from your revenue. So that's 2 grand a year. So you could borrow maybe a couple $100 from your $10,000. And then you're growing collateral investments, and you could afford $200, $300 investments. So this is the reality of more money makes money. Money makes money. If you're doing that same game with $1 million, and you have $300,000 worth of investments and $700,000, $700,000 worth of investments, like $300,000 worth of collateral, how much could you borrow? You could borrow easily 100 grand, and you'd be at a health factor of 3. So you could make investments of up to 100 grand into something strategic, and your $700,000 worth of investments at 30% APR is producing $210,000 a year. You could pay off your debt. So $210,000 a year, I wouldn't say $100,000 worth of debt is reasonable. I would say you probably want to pay off your debt within a month or so. So you got to size accordingly. So therefore, your investment potential is restricted. If you borrow $20,000 and you're making $200,000 a year, you can pay off your debt in around the month, give or take. So that sounds about right. So this is how you structure collateral quantity you need, how much investments you have, and how you manage debt, and how you manage cash flow. And Let's say you don't have any good investments. There's nothing good. Investment season is over, as I say. Now all your cash flow is doing one of two things. It's going to collateral, or maybe you need to buy something or pay a bill. But in that regard, you might as well accumulate the collateral and then pay off the debt, because then at least you have more collateral over time. So that this is the type of business procedures I'm talking about that are way more defined as compared to obsessing over net worth. But IMDC, my man, it sounds like you appreciate that type of idea. Critical mass LLLLC, something like that. Killis, good morning. How are you? Raul, hello. Dan, good morning. DA advisor. Arrows in the house. What about Frax? Okay, dude. Soon. Um, what about Frax? It seems to be flying under the radar, and Frax still appears to have minimal activity. Yes and yes. What is the best thing that could be said? The greatest tech is not always the greatest investment. Man is great tech. I love Frax. Is it the most lucrative? Is it the most consistent in paying? No and no. Is it highly depreciated? Sure. You buy things that are depreciated, discounted. Um, if you feel a lot of investing is sentiment and speculation, if you feel it's going to appreciate, okay, you size the position accordingly. But appreciation doesn't mean shit with regard to locked assets and what's the cash flow potential. I mean, there's a lot of speculation involved with Frax ecosystem. What's the cash flow? Speculation being what's the cash flow and where's it heading with regard to its capacity to pay you, which is why I talk so much about X, Y, and Z. How much does it cost? How much is it paying? And how likely is it to continue to pay? When you're talking about speculative cash flow, you don't know what it's going to do because it's not currently paying. It's much easier to be to manage investments and choose what to invest in if it's paying you today. If you put in X amount of dollars, $10,000, and it's going to pay you $100 on Wednesday or Thursday, you can make some calculations, and then you have to assess Z. How likely is it to continue paying you? That at least is a projection based on current, present ex- uh, experience and properties. Whereas if it's speculatively going to pay into the future, that could inhibit your cash flow. It may not pay what you were hoping it to pay into the future. It's speculative. So I'm much more quantitative in my business operations nowadays, which is why I talk about X, Y, and Z. Is probably being more interesting than speculating on future conditions. I much prefer current conditions because I know what current conditions are going to be in the future. If you take current conditions and you apply it to the market that's going to be next year in 2025, there's your Z component. It's going to be freaking weird. So I'm much more comforted by that reality as compared to speculating on potential future revenue. Anywho, I was debating buying Clio again, given the increase of activity, but concerned it could only be quite temporary given the mantle incentives. My man, stop buying and selling shit. It's gonna go. Things may not play out. Just digest or hear my sentiment. My sentiment is we buy things. Have you ever bought an electronic piece of electronics and you don't use it as much as you thought you would, and it just sits there a little bit? Maybe you don't return it. Maybe you can't return it anymore. But you paid it off, you paid the bill, you paid the credit card bill. All right, that's it. So it's very similar here. Operating the business, you're buying things according to XYZ that pay you. Not everything is going to be a good investment. The reason I encourage some thoughts for you thinking about this behavior is because every time you sell a discounted VE position, you're taking a fat hit on capital. And then now you are thinking to have it again. Consistency. It's not about conviction. Capital management is about consistency because then you could find comfort in the consistency. I bought a 35 chip worth of Clio. It's down to like 13. It's still producing a couple bucks. It's paid off is the point. Clio is paid off. I don't owe a dollar. I bought a piece of electronics at Best Buy and I don't owe anything on it. And this is what it produces. So to me, it is what it is. That's what I have. This is a couple weeks. I haven't claimed in quite some time. So I think there's like a hundred bucks in here, so worth of current weekly. Nile does okay, a little bit better. Ramsey's has been popping a little bit. Listen, if it's a couple $100 a week, you can only judge these protocols in hindsight. I'm much more. No, don't look at my email. I'm never been comfortable saying what are the things to buy. It's not my job. My job is to talk about the process that I follow that gives me peace of mind. And in 4 years' time, in 8 years' time, I'll have a story to tell. And it's everyone's individual responsibility to define their process. I can state that be consistent. The more consistent you are in your process, the less anxiety and frustration people will have, the more comfortable people will be to allow time to pass to get to 2028 and 2032. And then in 2028 and 2032, we could all sit around on the stream in a powwow talking about hindsight. Oh, this was cool. This worked out very well. So let's talk about stuff like that. Ramses, Cleo, and Nile in 2028. That's when we could have a more conclusive type of conversation where we could draw conclusions and make statements about what has occurred over time. Now we're talking speculative. Avoid the speculation. So that is a good point. Sure as hell is hard choices. But that's why I like to think in terms of things getting paid off. I don't owe any money on those purchases. Therefore, those purchases are going to produce what they're going to produce. That's the name of the game. Hope that helps. I've gone through all the comments for today. I wish you all a good one. Monday, July 22nd, 12:30 p.m. 178 people made it to the end of the stream. Tell everyone to subscribe because we could be a little bit more rational together. Jump on our Discord, the most rational community in the entire crypto space. We talk about crypto, we talk about business rules and all this stuff that allow you to be a little bit more sane and not be so obsessive over net worth. And then we'll be able to talk in hindsight about all these experiences in the coming years. I wish you all a good one. I'll see you later this week. Peace.